Curiosity's not a sin, Harry, but you should exercise caution.
It's a time strap. You're fraternizing with the enemy.
There's the Cruciatus curse.
And we'll celebrate a boy who was kind and honest and brave and true, right to the very end.
Hey everyone, welcome to Hogwarts, a podcast. Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Hogwarts, a podcast. We are doing chapter 32, Flesh, Blood, and Bone. And we do have a small announcement to make. Not really that small.
Woo! Woo!
Anna and I are traveling to Orlando in June.
Where are we gonna go, Dan?
We might be going to the Wizarding World of Harry Potter. We are very excited about this. It's going to be a really cool opportunity for us. If you don't follow us on Instagram, now would be a good time to start. We're thinking about going in early June, so we're getting this like a little month ahead shout out, but we'll keep updating you as our plans get a little bit more solidified.
As we get more and more excited.
As we get more and more excited, I'm kind of pumped for it. So we just wanted to throw that out there, let you guys know about it, because we might have, some fun things planned. But to get to the chapter of Flesh, Blood, and Bone, you requested this.
I did. This chapter is scary to me.
You requested it because it's scary to you?
Yeah, it's like so vivid in my memory from like we talk a lot on the podcast about, wishing we remembered whether or not we remember our very first read through of something. Yeah. I cannot tell you how vividly I remember my first read-through of the ending to this book, but this chapter specifically, because it gave me the first nightmare I ever had where I woke up with chills and shaking and sweating, and even though I was entirely too old to do so, I went and found my dad because I was scared. All this chapter.
Interesting. Okay, this is a pretty brief chapter. It's only 8 pages.
Yeah, it was very short.
Which I think might be the shortest chapter we've had. We've had some short ones.
We have, but no, this is probably, which I actually kind of like that she did it that way, because I feel like she made it so short to just make it literally. It is really just literally the regeneration.
Yep. Yeah, so I usually have gotten in this habit of giving a rundown of the chapter, but essentially you have Cedric and Harry arrive at the location at this creepy graveyard setting, which we might have seen earlier, think chapter 1. And you get Wormtail, you get some Voldy, and that's really the chapter. So where would you like to start, since this is the chapter that you have requested?
Well, I'm just going to go right for it then. I want to start with yew trees.
I chalked this up for things I wasn't expecting.
You're welcome. No, okay, and always and it continues on into the future, but basically, I just always thought it was a random detail for her to include when Harry and Cedric arrive. Harry's describing his surroundings and the house and the tombstone and the yada, yada, yada. There's also a large yew tree to their right. And it's kind of okay, does the 14-year-old Harry really recognize a yew tree specifically? So
he does make some very odd connections
exactly.
And descriptions. So,
no, that is JK wanting to include some sort of symbolism. So I looked into the symbolism of yew trees.
Ooh, I love it.
And basically, they have 2. They're symbols of immortality. Hey, Voldy. And they're also omens of doom.
Hey, Voldy.
Through much of history, yew branches are often carried at funerals, which I more thought of as R.I.P. Cedric. But, yeah. Also,
and that rolls into the first thing that we get of in this chapter.
Also, Voldemort's wand is made of yew.
That's what I was going to add, yeah. So, Abby, there's a lot to there, his wand being made of yew. Okay, so Anne and I have had some back and forth during this book about Cedric. And we have had a recent off-air conversation about this very scene, which we can actually share on the air now once we get into it. But Cedric and Harry arrive in the graveyard, and I like how they're like, well, this is weird. Is this part of the task? Is this not part of the task? Did you know about this? I didn't know about this.
Nobody told me this one.
And then Cedric's like, we should probably pull out our wands. Yeah, okay, good. I'm glad we're on the same page. And then really quick, there's this man stumbling through the gravestones, hooded and cloaked. You can't see. He seems to be maybe carrying a baby.
I thought it was interesting, when he got closer, Harry started to lower his wand.
I feel like the sense of security lowers.
Which I don't get. Like, if this weird hooded figure was stumbling towards me, I think I would be raising my wand, not lowering it.
Fair enough. I think it was maybe that they both thought he was literally carrying a baby that threw them.
Yeah, fair enough.
But yeah, you get both of them kind of losing their sense of on guardness. If that's a thing. And that kind of sets up what happens next, because they say he only gets to within a couple of feet, couple of meters of them, and then Harry gets disabled by the scar hurting so much.
Which I think is kind of weird, but I can talk about that. Continue
Sure.
with your rundown.
So Harry gets disabled,
Yeah.
and then that probably distracts Cedric too, of like, what's going on with you?
He's
and then
a good
boom,
person. Are you okay?
and then boom, boom, boom. All of a sudden, the Avada Kedavra and the light, like out of nowhere. Cedric, I don't think was caught completely off guard here. I don't think he was expecting the killing curse right out the gate.
Well, even if he was, there wasn't
much he could do
he
about
could
it.
have, yeah.
Yeah, he was kind of. This was like the worst case scenario for Cedric, which sounds redundant and dumb to say, but it's like.
Honestly, I don't think Cedric had a chance of making it out of that graveyard. Even if he had been a little more prepared for an attack, you know, with the things that come after this chapter ends and everything, I don't think Cedric makes it out.
I will say Wormtail is compiling quite the body count. Like,
yeah, well, he's a Death Eater.
He is, which we find out a little bit more information on as this thing goes. But the meat of this chapter, really all of the chapter, takes place with Wormtail essentially preparing this potion, which I think sets the tone for what you're talking about is your fear level with this chapter.
It's so creepy.
Yeah, creepy is a good word. I'm just going to say the quotes because I have them here and they're cool. So Wormtail, as he's preparing the potion, goes, "Bone of the father, unknowingly given, you will renew your son. Flesh of the servant, willingly given, you will revive your master. Blood of the enemy, forcibly taken, you will resurrect your foe." That's a cool scene setting.
Well, and the size of the cauldron that's needed for this,
Yeah.
so that, and being in a graveyard as all of this is, you know, spoken out loud.
Harry's
The
already been
bones
pinned to
being
the.
so old, they're dust. Yeah, Harry tied to the tombstone. It's
Harry's already been tied.
Snake slithering around.
Yeah, and Harry, you know, you get the Wormtail going through all of this, but you also have Harry piecing together what's actually going on. Like, after the shock of, oh my goodness, did Cedric just die?
Yeah.
And he's still trying to process that, and he can't even process that, and then he gets to this next thing of like, what is that thing in the
At this point,
cloak?
he doesn't even know it's Wormtail.
Right. He's like, what is the thing in the cloak? I don't think it's a baby anymore. Oh my gosh, I think I know what that thing is. And then you just get this thought process through it of like, when Wormtail drops the thing into the potion.
I call it a creepy baby.
When Wormtail drops the creepy baby into the potion, you get this thoughts from Harry of like, please drown.
Yeah.
Let it drown. Which is a dark
Very
thought.
dark, yeah.
The whole scene being set here is ominous.
Yeah. And just, you know, it's by no means the creepiest part of it all, but when Wormtail is reciting his part about the servant, you know, willingly giving to his master, and, you know, you read it very nice and smoothly, but in the way it's written, he's clearly stuttering and over it, and you just imagine him shaking, and the fact that he just has to cut off his own hand.
I had a question about that. Does he have to cut off the whole hand?
So this was another deep dive I tried to do. I tried to look up more about this potion because I feel like usually in the Harry Potter books you get a lot of detail about magic as big as this. You know, in a moment as big as this is given to us, we are given a lot of information about the process. Not so much with this. Like, the internet seems to be calling it the regeneration potion, and really the only thing there is to be read anywhere about it is just a breakdown of like what you just did, of what happens in the chapter. Everybody seems to be saying it must like the flesh needed must be at least as big of a hand. Like everybody seems to just be assuming it needs to be that large of a piece of their flesh. But is that just because that's what he does?
I mean, you could just cut off another finger. He's already cut off one.
Maybe that's not enough.
Maybe that's not enough. The symbology that I'm thinking of is he does cut off his, I believe it's his right hand, right?
Yes.
So he...
With the finger missing that he had already cut off.
Right.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, I guess that makes sense for him because he's like, well, I already have a finger missing from this hand, whatever. But also that symbology of like literally the right hand of the master.
Yeah.
Which I don't know that either of us would really consider Wormtail. I don't think Voldy himself would consider Wormtail the right hand of Voldy. But the symbology is there. If it's like a servant, you're literally giving your right hand for your master, which is like a symbology thing.
Yeah.
And maybe that's part of it.
Maybe it depends. Maybe you need more or less flesh depending on how much of a person you're regenerating. Like, what if maybe you're just, like, regrowing a hand?
Well...
Maybe then you only need a finger.
So I come from a medical background here, and I can get into this a little bit more in the next chapter, but he just cut off his hand.
Oh, yeah. No.
How is he not, like, in serious medical danger, like, right now? Like, what? I don't know. Well, we can get into that later, I guess. But that was my question, because I'm me. But anyway, the point of it is... Lord Voldy has risen again.
Yeah.
And I love the description, because I'm a description guy, and we've had so many descriptions throughout the first 4 books that I love, because I've forgotten exactly how she paints the picture of these characters and these scenes and these settings. But the picture that she paints of Voldy here is a tall, skeletally thin, whiter than a skull, wide, vivid, scarlet eyes, and a nose, flat like a snake's with slits for nostrils. That's a handsome dude. That's a far-flung depiction of the Tom Riddle from the diary.
But what I thought was interesting, it's not as far-flung from the creepy baby as you would first assume. Because if you go back to when Harry gets his first glance at the creepy baby, like, uncovered... Mm-hmm. The face is described as flat and snake-like with gleaming red eyes. So, obviously, she gives it a little more vivid picture now that he is fully regenerated. But, like, somehow it seems like he was able to keep his face. And this potion really just gave him, like, more of a fully functioning creepy body.
Okay, I'm going to ask you this question here. And I know you, of all people, are the person to ask about this.
Okay.
And, you know, we're in the non-spoilers, so we'll keep it to the first 4 books here. Well, that's hard to do, I guess.
You can ask me again in the spoilers.
I'll ask you again in the spoiler section. But this chapter, Miss Person Who Does the Sporkle Quiz of all of the chapters in the series, this chapter, even though it's 8 pages long, would you say it's the most important chapter?
In the first 4 books?
Yeah. Single most important chapter. I'm putting you on the spot. I did not prep her for this at all.
Like, I would say it's the most important magic in a chapter that we get to experience. That, like, we're there with Harry seeing this magical process go down. But I wouldn't say it's the most important chapter. Like, for us as readers, probably the most important chapter is The Boy Who Lived.
Because, right out the gate.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
But if we take that out, then probably, yeah.
Go back and listen to our The Boy Who Lived chapter, episode 1. I feel like our podcast has come a long way since our first episode.
I would like to think so.
For those that have stuck it out with us through now.
Thanks.
It's an interesting question, though.
It is an interesting. What do you think?
I think it is. I think it is the single most important chapter through the first 4 books. Just because this is that singular moment.
Yeah. It's basically what we've been trying to prevent happening since the series began.
And I actually kind of want to talk a little bit more about it in spoilers because
Agreed.
We can really dig into why this chapter might be the most
important. Yeah.
So let's do that. So let's head to the spoiler section. We'll talk more about this chapter's importance. We also wanted to talk a little bit. We've been a little delayed because we record these episodes a little bit in advance, but some news has dropped. And HBO has announced that they're doing a Harry Potter series. And Anne and I, shockingly, have thoughts. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well in the spoilers. So stick around for that conversation. And we'll be right back after you get the moment of this chapter, the kill the spare moment. We will be right back.
Kill the spare!
All right, so we are back with the spoiler section of Flesh, Blood, and Bone, chapter 32. And where we left off was discussing this chapter's importance, non-spoiler of the first 4 books. But I think now we can expand it to how important is this chapter in the whole entire series?
Which, if anything, makes its importance go up.
I agree. So my thought is, which again is mind-boggling because considering how short this chapter actually is, but it's all based on one singular moment of Voldy returning, which the whole series is pinned on. And literally, because this is about almost midway through the series completely. Yeah. And literally the whole series shifts and turns around on this chapter. But what do you think?
Well, so you came at it a little differently in why it's important than I was thinking of. I was thinking of quite literally its importance in the fact that he uses Harry's blood to return, and how going down the line that's so important, because quite honestly, if he doesn't use Harry's blood, is Harry walking out of King's Cross? Like, you know what I mean? Like, does he have, there's that whole link, later in this book, I'll never forget it, there's a line when Harry tells him that Voldemort uses his blood for the potion, that I believe the line is that there's a twinkle of triumph in Dumbledore's eye. And just, I think the level of importance, like Voldemort thinks it's so important that he used Harry's blood so that now he can touch him. And Lily's protection is gone. And whatever, her protection's not actually gone. But
I have questions on that, but we can get there.
But yeah, so that's where you're coming at it from is interesting, because we did have that off-air discussion about how after this book, the tone of the rest of the series just matures so vastly.
Yeah, it definitely jumps a couple of notches. Really quick, before we get too far away from that Lily's magic comment, I wanted to ask you a question based on these 2 chapters. You're going to be on for the next chapter. Spoiler alert for you guys. But he goes into this whole monologue about the magic that beat him. And here's my question. If he's taking the blood of Harry and he can touch him now, got it, wouldn't that eliminate the magic around the Dursley house? Or wouldn't that take from it?
I mean, you would think so.
Right?
No, I know, because he took that magic into him, so you would think then that I think where maybe there's the workaround is that it's more to do with the magic around the Dursleys is more to do with Petunia and her relation to Lily than with Lily's specific sacrifice. I think I fully understand, it's the fact that Petunia is of Lily's blood, and yes, Harry is obviously of Lily's blood, and Voldemort just took that blood into him. But I think because Petunia, I don't know.
So yeah, I think it's very easy to start poking holes in this.
Oh yeah, no, obviously I couldn't even fully defend against the point. But I think if J.K. Rowling were presented with that question, I think Petunia is the way she would attempt to defend herself. But you're probably right.
And that's something, I guess, to her credit.
Unless there's other magical protection around the Dursley house that we don't know about.
I mean, I'm sure there is. I'm sure Dumbledore was doing some fun stuff when he dropped off Harry. Of just like, I'm going to do this and this. And I'm sure. But I never thought of this before until I read these 2 chapters. And I just thought, like, wait a second. If he can do this, if he negates Lily's magic here, why can't he negate Lily's magic other places? I don't know. It's just confusing me.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm trying really hard to come up with something to poke you with, but nothing is really coming to mind.
It's just a fair question that I thought of. And if any of you have any thoughts on it, please let us know on Twitter, let us know on Instagram, because it's just kind of a loophole that I thought of, and I'm just like, does that make sense? I don't know. Anyway, we can talk more about it in the next chapter.
Really, though, you could poke holes about it even before, because, like, what is it about just the Dursley home that they can't breach it? Like, I mean, if it's about Lily's blood sacrifice, then why was Voldemort able to go anywhere near Harry in Hogwarts? Because, like...
Also, what's stopping a Death Eater from still entering the Dursley home? Unless it's because it's in his name that they're doing it?
Right.
I don't know.
So, yeah, the whole Dursley protection never really made very much sense to me. I feel like it just sounded real pretty to be like, as long as you return to the home of your mother, you'll be protected. Like,
it makes sense until you get this. Like, this kind of blows it all to pieces. But anyway, whatever. We have issues. Part of what so many people get on Order of the Phoenix about and emo Harry comes from this specific chapter.
I know.
And whether you like him or not, put yourself in Harry's shoes. You see someone who, other than the fact that he's dating your crush, right? They liked each other. Mm-hmm. Harry thought Cedric was generally a good dude
because he
is a good dude. So they got along really well. They were Quidditch buddies, like the whole thing. They got along really, really well. So you see someone that you've gone to school with, you get along with really well, who's helped you out, and you've helped him survive this tournament, and he dies. And this is the first real instance of Harry seeing and remembering someone die in front of him.
Like, obviously, you brought up emo Harry. The reason he is emo Harry, even though he still annoys the poop out of me, is because, he just experienced a great trauma. He watched, even if he didn't have respect for Cedric, and even if Cedric was a good guy, one of his peers, like you said, literally died in front of him. That's gonna leave a mark. He opens his eyes, and
even if you didn't have any of those connections,
lifeless body is right there. Yeah. Like, what 14-year-old is equipped to handle something like that? Not that the threat of Voldemort returning wasn't real in the first 3 books, but this, it's real now. Like, going from this point forward, it's life or death.
This is his moment of, even though he's only 14 here, this is his moment of, you're not a kid anymore. Like, now you are in this.
Right.
Very directly.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's only going to get worse, him being in this. Obviously, like, it's going to get worse in the next book when he finds out about the prophecy, and then Dumbledore dying. Like, it's just consistently worse from here on out for Harry.
It's an interesting chapter. For being all of 8 pages. And the Cedric stuff is really... I think Cedric does get mentioned in the next chapter too, or no, not the next chapter, the next chapter. Yeah. But Cedric's a very small part of this chapter, and then
honestly, I think Cedric's importance grows in the next book, and like his death. I feel like I'm not saying bad things about Cedric. Or
no, I get what you're saying.
Just like his death, I feel like is the most important part of his character for the series as a whole.
No, I'd agree with that. I mean, you can get into the cursed child of it all if you want to go down into the multiverse of Harry Potter.
That's not. I'm not ready for cursed child talk tonight.
Fair enough. But you can get into the multiverse of what if Cedric doesn't die here?
Yeah.
And, you could
get into the multiverse of what if Voldemort didn't use Harry's blood here.
Yeah, there's a lot of what ifs that can spring from just this chapter alone, which is interesting. That all being said, we do have one more thing. I guess I could bring up Cursed Child with this too, actually. We do have one more thing to discuss before we wrap up this episode, and that's the announcement of an HBO series that will be Harry Potter years 1 through 7, and they will cover each season is one book. So in theory, they've described it as they will follow the book somewhat religiously. I have some pros and some negative thoughts on this. And I know on Harry Potter Twitter, it's a volatile topic.
I'm sure.
For a lot of different reasons.
Yeah.
It's not just the JK reason, which is a big one, and I think it's safe to say that we would prefer her not to be involved with it.
Yes, that's my biggest issue.
Yeah,
But
I think that's safe to say that we both are against that. I think it was announced today as of our recording that she's going to be an executive producer credit on it. And she's come out and said that her role is, quote, preserving the spirit of the books in this series, end quote. Something like that. I'm
she's
paraphrasing.
the last person I want preserving the spirit of Harry Potter.
Correct.
She's
And
lost that right.
And I would like to put forth our application.
Yes, please. I'd be very good at it.
Here at Hogwarts, a podcast, we would like to formally present our application as consultants for the HBO Max series. We'd be really good, we promise. A lot of the other backlash is because they would have all new casting.
Right.
And
And there's a lot of love for the movies.
there is, and it's complicated because obviously some of the greatest cast members have passed, so there's no chance of them returning for this.
Right.
I'm not sure Maggie Smith would want to
No.
at this point.
That's a big commitment for Maggie Smith.
Correct. And then, everybody talks about the original trio. I was talking to a friend recently who said, is the trio involved? And I said, no. And then they were like, no, I'm out. And I get that. But Emma and Daniel have been adamantly refusing to do anything
With JK.
involving JK, which is why HBO has moved from a Cursed Child movie to this. The Cursed Child movie was fully in the process of getting to in production, except Daniel Radcliffe and Emma Watson were like, we're not doing it.
Which, I have so much respect for them.
Big
Because
respect.
I don't think there would have been a way legally to keep JK Rowling probably out of A Cursed Child because she was...
You want to know the rumor that I've heard? And this is purely a rumor, but the rumor that I heard was that Warner Brothers tried. They tried to buy her out. And
she just refused.
Her stipulations and her requirements for that were astronomical, and they just couldn't do it. And we've heard that was a real rumor through the entertainment business sites and Twitters and stuff like that they tried. Warner Brothers really did try.
I mean, that makes me have more respect than I previously had for Warner Brothers.
There were the rumors that Disney also pitched an offer to JK to buy her out. Now that would get a little questionable because Universal has the rights to the theme park, which that would have to be separate. Which
Disney is already kind of in that mess with Universal with Marvel anyway.
Correct.
So.
But Disney does have the money to potentially do it. They bought George Lucas out, so it's everybody has their price.
I just heard somewhere they're evaluated at $100 some odd billion,
which is stunningly low considering all of their properties.
Yeah, that
IP
was compared to Apple, who was valued at $2 trillion.
Right.
Yeah,
So I mean, I'm sure Apple and I'm sure Amazon can probably offer JK a very large sum to move away from the series for good. There's been reports that...
Would they have to do that to even do completely new content? Say we get, a Marauder or something, or a 20
prequel
years
of some
later
sort.
After Cursed Child, do they have to buy her out because it's Harry Potter, the Wizarding World?
She has, as far as I'm aware, she has her holdings on the franchise and the IP are pretty strict. That she has some sort of involvement in it going forward, which is why everybody's trying to buy it out.
So would they have to buy Wizarding World as a whole?
What, Disney?
Yeah, whoever wants to buy her out. Do they basically have to buy Wizarding World? Because she holds stakes in Wizarding World,
I think
right?
she holds a lot of stakes in a lot of things. I would say that they're trying to buy her out from the IP. They're trying to literally buy the IP from her.
But what does that, like, all cover? Just anything in the
She
world
wouldn't. She would get a
of-
lump sum payment instead of royalty checks.
No, I get that. But, like, I'm saying, like, are you allowed to create something in the world of Harry Potter without buying her IP? Like, can I go out and make some movie that
Not without paying her in
mentions,
some form or fashion.
like, anything that has ever mentioned anything in the Harry Potter books? Like, even, like, a book about Bertha Jorkins.
Anna's slowly revealing her future plans. Yeah, I mean, she would get a cut of it.
Okay. That's what I thought, too.
I assume she withholds the right to have any input
And
on
if you
it.
buy that IP from her, then you can just
Cut her out of the creative
do all of
process.
it.
Yeah. I'm assuming that's what they're
She
trying to do.
has zero say and zero money for any of it going forward.
Yeah, I heard, because she had that famous tweet that was like, are you concerned about people leaving your IP? And she was like, the royalty checks every week don't really cause much concern. And her royalty checks are reported to be somewhere in the range of like 50 to 100 million a year in just royalty checks. So that's a crazy amount of money.
Yeah, it is.
So it's a complicated subject, and I enjoy that there's been at least discussions being had about trying to buy her out of her franchise. It's not going to happen.
It would also make me feel less guilty about visiting Wizarding World of Harry Potter.
Yeah, stay tuned for announcements related to us visiting the Wizarding World. But as in regards to the actual series itself, I'm excited for it. I can't divorce myself from the love of Harry Potter in general, and I'm here for it. And I'm kind of excited, honestly, for a new cast. I want to see the creative side of it.
It's too soon. I
I
mean,
will
like,
give
would
you
you
that.
be okay with a reboot of the Lord of the Rings movies?
No, I agree with you. It is too soon.
It's just, like...
I agree with that.
We are the Harry Potter generation. Our love for the movies are not perfect. I complain about the movies on this podcast alone, like, all the time.
Right.
But it still just feels like I'm probably going to watch the show. And am I excited for the potential for them to include Peeves and for them to include a lot of the things that
More
were
Dobby,
left out?
and yeah.
Of course I am.
And Mandy
But
Brocklehurst.
I kind of feel, obviously. I just feel kind of like I'm going to feel like I'm cheating on my childhood.
I had, when the movies were still going, because Hollywood is Hollywood and money is money, I knew they were going to reboot the franchise in some form or fashion.
But I hoped it was like later in my life or even after I was dead.
Yeah, I had originally said when the movies were out, like, oh, give it another 30 years and they'll do a reboot. And then as it like waned on and, you know, money speaks. And I was like, oh, maybe 30 years is too far down the road. They're going to do it earlier than that. I didn't expect less than 10 years. Like, roughly, it's going to be about 10 years, give or take, from Deathly Hallows, right?
No, we're already past 10 years.
All right, 12 years. It's like, what, 2011 or something like that?
It came out in 2011.
Yeah, so 12 years. That's still not a lot of time.
No, I know.
A third of what I had estimated, which is crazy to me. So I'll give you that. It's too soon.
The idea of the original trio, because I think a lot of people are going to be upset about the original trio. Think of all the adventures they probably could have made a movie about if they could have gotten Dan and Emma back. Because I think Rupert is so laid back. He would just, you know, he just calls JK his crazy auntie and is living his best life. But if they could have gotten Dan and Emma back, he would have come. Tom Felton, you know, would have come. Give me some stories about Harry and Ron becoming Aurors. Give me some stories about Ron running the joke shop with George. George living his post-Fred being dead life. Hermione's campaign for Ministry of Magic. Like,
I want to leave you with this thought, this potential thought. Just for, you know, some giggles here at the end of this episode. Wouldn't it be some stuff? You're talking 7 seasons, and it's going to take time to produce this. You're going to take, it's not going to be 7, like, television seasons. It's going to be years that this whole thing plays out through. Like, this might be a decade of stuff, depending on how they want to actually, I'm assuming they're going to do it right. Like, they're going to make sets. They're going to, like, the whole thing. It's going to be some
If
time.
they do, because it's HBO, if they do what they did to us with Game of Thrones, where it's like so good, so good, so good, sucks at the end.
Well, I don't think they can, because at least all of the books are written. so there is that.
Yes, that's true.
But to your point, if this goes on for so long, who knows what happens in these intervening years?
True.
What if, and I'm just throwing this out there, I'm just tossing it into the wind, that epilogue scene, what if we do get a real Daniel Radcliffe, Emma Watson, Rupert Grint as their actual real adult selves in their 40s or whatever?
That would be awesome.
In the epilogue scene.
That would be cool.
That'd be a cool
I'd
spin,
like
wouldn't
that.
it?
Yeah, that'd be cool.
That would be, I am telling you right now, HBO, hire us.
Yeah.
Number 2, I guarantee you, if they did that episode would be Game of Thrones-esque level watch entertainment.
Oh, well, it's already going to be that, but that would be, oh my God.
That single episode would get everything.
That single scene, I would cry my eyes out. Oh my God.
Yeah. So that's the thought I want to leave you guys on.
Oh no, wait for it. If you do that by, a decade out, say it takes like a decade to make all these movies.
Yep.
Rupert Grint has a baby. Daniel Radcliffe has a baby.
Oh, they're
on the
actual
way.
kids?
They're actual kids. God, that would be so cool.
That's a whole nother level to it. That would be some stuff right there. Well, we're leaving you on that, so let that thought soak in on you. Let us know what you think about everything regarding the HBO series, the chapter that we've just discussed, Flesh, Blood, and Bone, and let us know on Twitter, on Instagram. It's a really cool chapter. We think it's a really pivotal one. The next chapter is a bigger one in terms of stuff happening. There's a lot going on. So join us for that one, and we get to meet some Death Eaters. So exciting. And Anna loves when I talk Death Eaters. So we'll have some fun with that. We'll see you next week. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to Hogwarts, a podcast. If you like what you've heard, please click the subscribe button on your preferred podcasting app and follow us on Twitter and Instagram @HogwartsAPod.